Hello and welcome to another bonus episode of the Lights, Camera, Combat podcast. On this episode, we will be taking a look back at some of our guests' biggest achieving stories over the course of this series, ranging from playing in a World Cup final for England, to becoming business partners with a Premier League football team, to breaking 4 world records. Some of the most exciting and inspirational stories of the series so far, all here in one place. If you don't already know, this summer we are running a summer of fundraising for Help for Heroes, and a full video talking all about that has dropped, and I will leave a link to that and to a fundraising page in the description down below. But for now, I will let you get on and enjoy this episode with some of our biggest achieving moments of our guests in Lights, Camera, Combat. Some of those records, the try record, clear by 13, quite a gap. Especially when you look at the distance of numbers between the people below you, there's a massive gap there that you've got. Does it maybe highlight the impact on the game that you've had, the more time that passes when you look back, and the records that you made at the time are still records?
It's not for me to talk about the impact I had on the game. All I can say is that I was very privileged to play at a time when we had that success during the 90s. Because bear in mind, I played for 12 years, and the first 4 years of my time was fairly average for England. I scored 4 tries in my first 4 years playing for England. We were a pretty average side. Nowhere near close to winning the 5 Nations at all. And then things changed when Jeff Cook came in, 88. We had that famous victory against Australia at Twickenham, played some exciting brand of rugby. I scored 2 tries that day. And that team that he picked that day became the sort of embryonic squad that went on to be the successful team that made, losing the Grand Slam decider in Murrayfield in 1990, win the Grand Slam in 91, get to a World Cup final in 91, win a Grand Slam in 92, win a Grand Slam in 93, and I think in between that, at least winning one more championship. So, I was very, very fortunate to play during a time when England had a really, really good crop of players coming through, which obviously helped me score my tries. I'll be the first to say, I scored 49, but I was just the last person that touched the ball before I scored. Yeah, there's a few tries I had to do a bit of work for and stuff, but fundamentally, I always tell people I wouldn't have scored those tries if the 14 other people on the pitch didn't get the ball to me.
Mm. And there's the specific instances I want to go into, but firstly one that you've just sort of brought up, a World Cup final. What's that like? Most people can only ever dream of being in that kind of environment.
I know, and especially our World Cup final was actually at home, so it was a special one. Describing it itself, it's in some ways it was just like any other game at Twickenham, but in other ways it was such a completely, way bigger than that could obviously be, and there's a lot of talk about it. You're too young to remember it, but there's a lot of talk about the tactics we played and various things. I mean, from my perspective, it's one of my highlights, because not many people can say they've been to a World Cup final. But it's one of my lowlights because we lost the game, and we lost it 12-6. It was a close game. It's one of those things in sport. Sometimes it's your time, sometimes it isn't. That day, we didn't play well. A handful of us didn't have good games. I'm not picking anybody out, so I probably put myself in there. We just didn't quite click that day for some reason, whether it was the occasion, the awe, whatever it was, I don't know. And I wouldn't say I regret it, because we try to prepare beforehand. You think you do everything you needed to do, but obviously that performance that day was not. It didn't warrant to win that day, and it brought it home to me. Obviously we were all disappointed and gutted, but it brought it home to me when 12 years later I was actually in the stadium in Australia watching Johnny Wilkinson kick that drop goal over, and then when the final whistle went, I was with all the other Mad England supporters in the stadium that jumping around, and so 50% of me was just, as an England supporter, I was over the moon that we won the World Cup. But it's 50% of me as a player that was so disappointed that it could have been us 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't ruin, regret it per se. I don't wallow in that self-pity about it. You play sports, and I've got more in my credit, in my positive tank, than I do in my negative tank.
Yeah, 100%, and I think that's a super important outlet to have anyway. And do you think that the preparation for that game was any different? Did it feel different? Obviously, the scale of the game is obviously going to make it different, but did it? Was there anything that you did as a team differently that you think might have?
Well, therein lies the sort of it's gone in folklore as to whether we massively changed our tactics that day from where we've played before. I mean, my view always has been our tactics have always been relatively the same. We just make a few tweaks here and there depending on the side we play against, and that's my recollection of it all. I don't remember us. The thing is, if we'd won that, nobody would have made a comment about the tactics. The fact is, I don't think we played well, which then it just exacerbates the fact that it didn't quite go our way. So there are some people that view that we try to run it a bit too much than we should have done. All I remember is we didn't play as well as we could have done. And if you wanted to go back to every single game and dissect what could have gone or might have done or what would have been, whatever, you'll drive yourself into an early grave.
And that one, kind of speaking of the home World Cup there, how can you articulate that feeling of walking out to a packed Twickenham, singing and that atmosphere? How can you put that feeling as a player into words?
The best way I can do it is, if you've never been to a Twickenham stadium, it obviously becomes harder because having it come across on the TV is never quite the same. But if you're watching on TV and when the England players run onto the pitch and you hear the crowd go up and you get a sense of pride, hair on the back of your neck stick up on end, and you're watching on TV. But if you're at the stadium at Twickenham and you hear and feel the roar go up when the England team run out on the pitch, and you feel that, that sense, the roar, you feel it, hear it, and you have the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. Just try and imagine, multiply that however you think, what it's like when you're actually wearing a white shirt and you walk out the tunnel onto the pitch when the crowd goes up. Never mind when you sing the national anthem. So, for us that have the privilege of actually wearing the England shirt and running out on the pitch, it's one of life's, fortunate things that I've had in my life to be able to do. But from a team sport, especially from a rugby perspective, and especially for England, I mean, you apply it for whichever team you support, obviously. But for England supporters and England players, that's the height, to be able to have the privilege to walk onto the pitch that day to represent your country.
Do you miss it?
Oh yeah, I 100% miss that. I 100% miss that. I 100% miss running on the try line and scoring. I love looking at pictures of tries that I've scored, not because of me scoring the try, but looking at the crowd in the background, seeing the reaction on their faces and their faces lit up, and some of them are still thinking, has he scored? Some of them with their arms up in the air, some are already cheering, and all that sort of stuff. That is fantastic.
So now you find yourselves obviously partnered with the Premier League football team, obviously, which is obviously a nice thing for you, working within government buildings in the Ministry of Defence. Has it hit a point where you didn't envisage it growing to this size?
I thought that'd always be a van,
a
caravan, and so on. And we done some work at Hoseley Bay with the governor, and he wanted to bring a coffee shop into the prison to support the men to make it less prison-like. Mm-hmm. And Hoseley Bay is an open jail, so they work, and it's a resettlement prison. And we opened this coffee shop the day before lockdown. You couldn't make it up, but that became to our benefit because Gary, who's a big supporter of the project, he had 550 men there in their own bubble, walking around the jail doing nothing. So when the first lockdown was subsided a bit, he said, look, could we serve coffee from one door and they collect from another door? And I said, yeah, why not? And we just charged them £1, and because they had money, we put a payment mechanism in, and literally it opened, and within 6 months I had made a few quid. And he said, look, we've got to do something else. I need to occupy more men. I said, well, let's do a coffee roastery. He said, Gary, what does that involve? I don't know, I'll find out. And he match funded that 10 grand. And we opened this coffee roastery.
Yeah.
During that time, I had my leg done.
Yeah.
From an old injury from the military, as we've mentioned. And the idea was we were going to make coffee or roast coffee for us with the mental health message to help others, but keep it local. And our first coffee order was 90 kilos from a farmer in Brazil who I'd been introduced to, his nephew, and so we were buying direct.
Yeah.
Last October, November, we had 20 tonne delivered in one delivery.
Wow.
That shows the growth.
Yeah.
But we done a roasting course with 8 prisoners. They learned to roast with the Specialty Coffee Association, so they got a qualification. And one of them prisoners still roasts for us today.
Wow.
He's got out, he's resettled into the community. All I've done is coached him, he's done it. He's a life sentence prisoner, committed a serious offence at 17. He's now 50. If that's all we do, we've done enough.
Yeah.
But we do a lot more than that, and we've helped veterans in custody, and then as we've grown, or as I've kept shouting, do you want to try my coffee?
Yeah.
Blah blah blah, and knocked on doors and so on. And I knocked on Ipswich Town, and I got a big turn down on the old regime with Marcus Evans.
Yeah.
Massive turn down, and I credit to Mark Ashton. I knocked on a door and I emailed. No, I see Brett Johnson, who's one of the owners, put something on Twitter about he's got a cup of coffee in his best cup and an Ipswich Town cup, and I said, but you haven't got the best coffee. Mm-hmm. And he DM'd me, what do you mean? I said, I run a veterans project, Americans, veterans, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Loved it. I got some contact from the club.
Yeah.
Had a meeting. I then had a meeting with a gentleman who's there now, one of the directors of venue, Stuart Cox. Had a meeting with Mark Ashton, and they said, look, we love the concept, we love the taste, we love what you can do, we'll roll with you. And they offered me a contract, and I said, oh, can I have 3 years? Right?
Yeah.
And Stuart said, well, this is a 5-year plan, surely you want a 5-year? Yeah, I'll have a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
So I'm now in year 3.
Yeah.
And I thank him, I thank the club.
Yeah.
Right? And I know people get criticism at the club, and I know Mr. Ashton gets criticism at the club because he's a businessman.
Yeah.
But his intentions are very honourable.
Yeah.
And he supported me in lots of other stuff.
Yeah.
And I got my pro contract. Boy from Chantry got his contract to be the coffee supplier for Ipswich Town, and you can see my face change, and I'm very humble to that, and I'm very privileged I get to see players, and I've sold a couple of coffee machines to players. I have contact with some of them because of coffee.
Yeah.
We supply the club their own unique coffee. Mm-hmm. No one else gets that. Yeah. Very high spec graded coffee called Butcher's Blend, because our patron, as you know, is Terry Butcher, who's obviously a former Ipswich player and had his own journey with grief from his son passing away through military mental health. I've knocked on that Ipswich door, and I'm a season ticket holder. I've been a season ticket holder for years. Yeah. So when I've seen Combat Coffee flag up on the scoreboard, you can imagine what I'm being interviewed on the pitch on Remembrance, or they believe in what I do with medals to matches. Yeah. Right. That's amazing. I can't explain it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Very privileged.
Yeah. You mentioned medals to matches there. What's that?
So I had this idea. One of my ideas 3 years ago. Dan Palfrey, who's the head of foundation, supported it. He was running a fan zone at the time. Medals to Matches was about taking veterans to football who may not go because they've got their own struggles, or getting people who are military on the Saturday game before to wear their medals, because then that creates conversation. What were you in? What did you do? And if there's someone says, I was in the military, what was you in? Such and such. Did you do any tours? Yeah, and I'm from. When you got any medals? Oh, I'm struggling, mate. Bang, you can then get them help. Yeah. And military veterans help veterans. Yeah. Right? And that was the idea. So year 1 we got given 30 tickets, and that went really well. Year 2 we got 100 tickets. Brilliant day, and it was a very structured day. And I was in the fan zone talking on the stage with Russell Osman, bloody. We all wore a hoodie made by Hoax, which has medals to matches. Come back to coffee with the poppy and the Ipswich badge.
Yeah.
It's my aim to get them on sale next year. I've got to do it earlier rather than keep. Oh, we're doing medals to matches in September.
Yeah.
This is the time I start doing it. But everyone looked the part. Then people bought hoodies, and it became a community. This year went to the extremes. So Terry came last year, loved it. That's when he said I asked him to be our patron, and he's agreed. And Russell came because Russell was Chris's godfather. And this year we didn't get as many tickets, and I asked the club, I said, I understand you're in the Premier League, you're not going to give us 100 tickets, but can I have 30, and we'll try and build the network to get season ticket holders coming. And Luke Wern, the COO, agreed, which was great, and it couldn't have gone any better. This year this next year we're taking it to other clubs, 100%.
Really?
We've started off in Bar 21. So it was a meeting place. Everyone gets their hoodies. People would join us with season ticket holders buying hoodies, blah blah blah. At 12 o'clock we'd done an act of remembrance, and we had a few former army former veteran, or a veteran, former military personnel play last post. You could hear a pin drop in Bar 21. And then we had 4 pipers turn up, and they'd done their equivalent of Rivali. And I'm telling you now, there's some notorious Ipswich fans, if you were to have them in that, who weren't dry in the place. And then we got a guy to put a reef on a hook in there who just joined the military. And then indirectly we were getting everyone. I want everyone at the fan zone for 20 to 2 because it's timings. Terry and Russell were going to go and talk about medals to matches in the game, and that's how Terry's grown, because he didn't do it before. He wouldn't do it before. And the piper said, "Well, we'll march you." So we had 4 pipers, and then there's videos out there. We're all in lines. There's like 80 people marching to the football ground, indirectly playing by bagpipes.
Yeah.
When you went past the curve bar, which was rammed, everyone was cheering and Blue Army, and the police stopped the traffic.
Yeah.
And we went to the football ground, and that could not have gone any better. And then the pipes played in the fan zone.
Yeah.
And I think next year it could be bigger, and I want other clubs involved. But it's all about mental health.
Yeah. Do you think, you say about sort of other clubs involved, do you think that it's actually, football sort of maybe traditionally has been there's a lot of men that will go to the football, and it's sort of part ritualistic as a Saturday. Do you think that therefore there is a market for other clubs to get involved? You obviously now Ipswich are a Premier League team, you've got that Premier League exposure, for other teams to catch on to it, and it is an opportunity for you to get guys that maybe already go to the football but don't talk about it. And
that's where I want to be. Can you imagine, we have this same hoodie done, and Jason at Hoax will do it. He comes with us, he loves it. Obviously we give one to Mr. Sheeran. He may wear it one day, but he's got one. Terry wears his all the time.
Yeah.
The vision is that we maybe do it at 3 or 4 other clubs.
Yeah.
They have the same hoodie, but we try and find a representative to coordinate it at the other club, who may be military, and that would be very easy to do, because most football clubs or foundations have a veterans coffee morning now. And I started that up in Ipswich and with the foundation, and we were doing this. That's banging, that's brilliant. But if they do the same message, it will get natural organic growth.
Yeah.
And it's like next weekend, we've been asked to be part of March of the Day 2 for Marcus Stewart.
Yes.
So we're doing the whole route with the coffee van.
Nice.
So they've got, and there's 50 plus pros doing that, ex-pros. And then that will only, if I start mentioning medals to matches, and we'll put pictures on the screen on the van, hopefully other clubs will get involved.
Yeah.
And it's only going to be a good thing. And it's about remembering. Most veterans only wear their medals on Remembrance Sunday or a funeral, right? And actually, why don't we educate people at a football match and actually say, things are hard and you're allowed to struggle. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
And it's been great. And then Terry talks about it. Talks about we have a beer after. My beer's after the game, when everyone goes their own way. I think Ipswich have bought into my message.
Yeah.
They do support me. Of course, I want them to do more. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Let's be realistic. I've always, can we have combat the coffee on the shirt for one game?
Yeah.
And then what Mark Ashley explained, we can't just do that.
Yeah.
He said, because it all has to be done through the league, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And I took that on board.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But of course, I've got visions.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm proud to be associated
Yeah.
with Ipswich Town Football Club, and,
Yeah.
and whatever happens this season, I'll be proud next season.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to drive, we'll continue the message, and we'll continue, they be Premier League or not, but they will continue to drive their message to get into the Premier League if they're not.
You go from this position from, fully staring death in the face, there's no two ways about that. And then you decide to, as we are here now, break 4 world records.
Yeah, it didn't quite happen like that.
Talk me through how it happened and how it all came about.
Right. Realistically, in 2004, I was in the Commando display team and I organised the end of season piss up. And I was in a bar in Poole in Dorset talking to a former Royal Marine who then ran a pub, and he had a cellar bar and it was doing perfect. And on the wall was this odd looking boat. And we was chatting, going through how much it would cost, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what's that boat? And he went, oh, it's the boat I tried to row the Atlantic with. And I went, what? Row the Atlantic? I couldn't believe it. Didn't even know that was a thing. Anyway, never thought about it again. Lose my leg. And then the first admission at Headley Court, the guy who was in the bed opposite me was called Cal Voice. And a double amputee. And had a big beard. And I rock up in a wheelchair and says, oh, what's with the beard? And he says, I've just come back from rowing the Atlantic. So I went, what? And I spent the next 2 weeks asking every aspect of the row. He'd rowed, crossed with road to recovery. And there was 2 wounded, 2 disabled amputee servicemen, 2 able-bodied. So, and me and Cal became our admissions at Headley Court overlapped a lot, so we became quite friendly. And then I got at the end of my first year as an amputee, kind of wondering what I was going to do. I had no idea. I was trying a phased return at work, see if I could go back to work. I didn't know. And I got an email asking for volunteers to put together the world's first all amputee crew. Applied, ended up part of the team, and in 2015, December 2015, so less than 2 years after losing my leg, I was in a little boat with 3 other amputees. We had 3 legs between the 4 of us as we rowed out of San Sebastian, which is in La Gomera, one of the smaller Canary Islands. We rowed 46 days later via the strongest Atlantic hurricane, January Atlantic hurricane for 61 years, Hurricane Alex. 46 days later we rowed into English Harbour in Antigua, and the record books. I then saw an opportunity. I thought, right, I know how to. I've rowed the Atlantic, so I know the way.
Yeah.
I've come to the end of really my rehab. I ain't going to get any better. And I reckoned on the Marines still paying me for another 18 months, a year to 18 months before I got fed up and kicked me out. And so I thought I could work full time on it. So I thought I'd have a go at rowing solo. So I started putting it together. Then on HMS Victory in Portsmouth, I had a very drunken conversation with a general called Ed Davies, who happened to be the governor of Gibraltar. And he said, why don't you row from Gibraltar through the Straits and out and across? And I thought, wow. And then I noticed that there was a record that was the third person in history to row from mainland Europe to mainland South America.
Yeah.
It's obviously a lot longer. There's a Norwegian called Steinhoff, and he rowed in 2002. He was the third person to do it. He was also two people before him, and he was the fastest, so he had the record. It was 96 days, 12 hours, 45 minutes. So I thought, well, I'll try to beat that record. Ended up not being able to get a weather window to allow me to run through the straights. I went from Portugal instead. After a couple of false stars, one where my mum died 3 days before I was due to set off. But I ended up rowing across the Atlantic in 2019, and I beat the able-bodied record from going from, so I beat Steinhoff's record, but I was the 4th person in history to do it, and the fastest by 36 days. So I've done it in 60 days, 16 hours, 6 minutes. And I believe I am the world's only physically disabled person to break and hold a world record in a physical endurance event.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And the talk about challenges and things to overcome. And I said right at the beginning when we were talking about the early days, sort of touching on your mum, and you've just done it there. What you're ready to do this, and then obviously that tragic moment occurs. What was some of the impact on? And I'm sure, am I right in saying that it pushed you back a year?
Yeah.
In doing that? What did that do for you? Not only to lose your mum, but also to then you've prepared for all of this, and then the setback comes of a year to be able to do it again.
A lot of people. I had a conversation with some of the people who were involved in it, and one of them said, "Well, you wasn't ready. You know, if you're going to do this again." He was going to be my weather router, and I think he articulated what a lot of people were thinking. He said, "I looked into your eyes, you weren't ready." I was like, basically, I got a phone call from my sister to say, like, your mum's really, really bad, and the word she used was, the specialist said there's nothing they could do for her except make her as comfortable as they can to the end. They're the words I got. You obviously drop everything, jump on the plane and get. But whilst I was that afternoon, got a first flight, we could get back we had to go to Spain, and mum died whilst she was in the air. So, and I remember I spoke to this bloke, like, you grieve, you get on with it, you bury, then you get on with life. And I said, right, ready to go, we're going next year. And he says, well, I don't know. I think you need to come and do this course. I think he was trying to get some money out of me to try and get me to do some bizarre course. He said, you wasn't ready for. So that be. Sorry, I'm going to swear. Your fucking mother was on her literally on her deathbed. I'd spent 2 years putting this together. I worked myself. I was working 17, 18-hour days, 7 days a week to get that boat to the start line.
Yeah.
I was absolutely ugly. I was looking forward to getting in a boat and rowing it across the Atlantic to get some bloody rest.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that flippantly.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people who dropped out. And they're all nice about it. They'll go their excuses, but I know that they thought that I'd somehow balled it, even though you said, my mum died.
Yeah.
What could I do?
Yeah, 100%.
But I think, I don't know. I don't know if I might be wrong, but I certainly felt that, yeah.
What were some of the struggles that you had to overcome doing it? I'm sure there were difficult moments in those 60 days.
Physically rowing.
Yeah, physically, mentally.
Right, mentally, I'm quite needy. I'm a people person. I love being around people. I love company. I thought I'd struggle on my own. And surprisingly, I was okay with it. It didn't bother me at all. Be completely on my own. Which was a surprise because I thought I would. The biggest thing was fear. In the middle of the Atlantic, I got hit by these huge waves. And the difference between being in a hurricane in a rowing boat in the middle of the Atlantic, which is quite a thing to say, isn't it? Yeah, not a lot of people who can say that. But like a hurricane twists, and over a 24-hour period, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But the waves kind of change direction, and they're quite dirty and choppy because of that. Now I had it was perfect rain conditions, perfect, like the trade winds were just constant, banging out, 15, 20, 25 knot winds. So the waves were quite big, but they were quite clean, you know. And then I had this period in the middle, bang in the middle. Bearing in mind that there were times in the middle of the Atlantic where the closest humans to me were on the International Space Station, and there's a very real chance that, you know, on the planet, how many are there? 7 billion of us?
Yeah.
Out of 7 billion people, there's a chance that I could have been the most isolated human on the planet.
Yeah.
That affects you. But then there was this period of about 5 days when the winds just picked up. So all they did, they weren't mad. I think they were blowing about 35 knots, gusting 40. Okay, which is quite windy.
That's strong.
But it's not a hurricane.
Yeah.
You know. But because it had been constant from the same direction, it turned those huge waves that had built, that were quite clean and not that angry, into this huge, angry, monstrous waves. And it was, I spent 5 days absolutely petrified.
Wow.
I had to come up with a coping mechanism for dealing with it, because I was
Which
distraction. So I'd save every bit of morale I had, whether that was food, whether that was my favourite tunes, whether that was listening to audio books, and you get to that bit, you know, if you was reading an actual book, it'd be like the page turner at the end, stop it. And only ever listening to it when the fear was unbearable. It didn't take the fear away, but it took the edge off it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sleep, you know. I was going downhill. And in fact, I noticed after that 5-day period, wind settled down and the waves settled down, body was falling apart a bit. You have to, after every rowing session. So I was rowing 2 hours on, 1 hour off during the day, and I went to 2 on 2 off at night with a 4-hour off period from 2 till 6. So it's 12 hours rowing, 12 hours off. And you wipe the salt off you every rowing session, because the salt builds up, turns into crystals, the crystals cut into the skin, you start getting sores.
Yeah.
So at the end of that period, I'd neglected to kind of really look after myself. I was going downhill really fast, so that was really difficult period. But by far the hardest part of that row was the last 2 weeks. With 2 weeks to go, I hit the wall physically, and then the mental gymnastics I'd have to go through to get out and row meant that right on the turn of physical exhaustion was mental exhaustion, and then emotional exhaustion.
Yeah.
And for 2 weeks I was just in despair. It's the only word I've got for it. It's the hardest.
How did you get through?
2 things. One is you take it step by step. You don't look at what you got left. You just get through that next rowing session. I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out and row. Not because I was scared, I just couldn't move.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to count to 10. I counted to 10 and I couldn't move. Well, I counted to 10 again. Couldn't move.
Yeah.
I'd done that for 40 minutes. It took me 40 minutes. Do you want me to stop or?
No, you can keep talking because the audio will still pick up.
Took me 40 minutes. That's how hard it was to get out and row. And the way I looked at it is, you just got to do it 2 hours at a time. Just look at that rowing session by, you know, step by step, breaking it up. But the other one was another really hard thing, was not letting lies you tell yourself settle. So I kept telling myself, you know, if I don't row this session, if I rest, then I'm going to be so much stronger. I'll make that. But you know that's a lie. Once that 2-hour raid session's gone, it's gone forever. And the reason it was crucial, I couldn't rest, I couldn't just stop, was coming in to South America. There's this current that runs up the coast. It's called the Southern Equatorial Current. And it runs so strong that we had to drop 100 miles south to use it to come up to the finish point. So that meant if I stopped rowing, that current would just push me north and I'd miss the finish point and I wouldn't. And actually there wasn't anywhere else I could finish. It was just all mangrove swamp north of where I came in. So you tell yourself, you lie and you think, well, you know, if I rest, I'll make the time up. And what done it is going back to training. You remember I said that I looked around and thought I'm one of the weaker ones in the troop. Whenever anyone left, they were always stronger and fitter than me. And I was always astonished. Why has he left? They'd always say the same thing, it's not for me. And I knew that was a lie, because it was for them. You can't just join the Marines, you know. You can't just go in the quiz and say, I want to join the Marines. In you go.
Yeah.
You have to go through a process, and it's quite hard and difficult. So it has to be for you. You can't just join on a whim. So it was for them. And how do they know it's not for them? Because it's training. It isn't the Marines. It's the hurdle you have to get over to be the Marines. So it was just a blatant lie.
Yeah.
But they all said the same thing, and it always astonished me that they could lie to themselves. And it was remembering those lies meant that the lies I was telling myself, that if I rested, it would be better, it stopped them from landing.
Yeah.
So that's how I carried on going. And I can't emphasize enough, I'm going to make a statement, right, that I will nail to the wall. I know what I'm saying. I understand what it means. And it is, I'm still saying it is 100% true. Those 2 weeks are by a country mile the hardest, most horrible, emotionally bleak, horrible thing I've ever been through, with the possible exception of some of the things that happened to me when I was a small child.